There are two ways to change a percent to a decimal. First, I'm going to show you how to do this mathematically, and then I'll show you a shortcut that a lot of people use. Okay? When it comes to writing a percent as a decimal, the first thing we want to do is change that percent to a fraction. And remember, that fraction will have to have a denominator of 100 because a percent is out of 100. So 35% we're going to write as 35 out of 100. Now, decimal place value deals with base tens. It's tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And so the fact that we have a denominator of 100 here is going to be helpful to us when we write our place value for decimals. Remember, decimal point, the first digit after the decimal is our tenths place. The second digit after our decimal is our hundredths place. So for me to have 35 hundredths, what I need is a decimal that has two digits after the decimal point, hundredths. And 35 would fit right like that. So 35 hundredths is going to have a 0 and then a decimal point, 35. Let's try 7%. Again, start off writing it as a fraction out of 100. 7 hundredths. So when it comes to writing this as a decimal, 7 hundredths, this is my tenth spot, this is my hundredth spot. So what I'm going to do is I need 7 in my hundredth spot, but there isn't a number to go here, so I just fill that with a 0. And this is how we write 7 hundredths. Now 150% is a little bit trickier. We know that this is an amount that's more than 100%. So the easiest way to do this, we know that because we have more than 100%, it's more than one whole, which is going to end up giving us a mixed number. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off changing this to a mixed number. 150 out of 100 is the same as 1 and 50 over 100. Okay? Now, this 1 is going to become my whole number in front of my decimal point. The 50 hundredths would look like this, 50 hundredths. Now, because that hundredths place is a 0, we could also write this 1 and 5 tenths. Okay? That's just another way to do it. Now, in terms of our shortcut, the shortcut says that in order to change a percent to a decimal, what we do is we move the decimal place 2 places to the left. When you move the decimal 2 places to the left, that's the same as dividing by 100. And remember, all these fractions with a denominator of 100, that's what it really means, is we're dividing by 100. So what we do is we take this percent, so 35%. 35 is a whole number. Any whole number has a decimal point at the end of it here. In order to change this to a decimal, if I use my shortcut, I'm going to take this decimal and move it 2 places to the left, which would put it here, which, if you look, is what we ended up with down here. Okay, let's try 7. 7%. My decimal point starts here, but if I'm going to move it 2 places to the left, 1, 2, it'll end up here, and because there's an empty space, I fill it with a 0, and you can see what we got is the same thing. Now, once we change it to a percent, or to a decimal, we get rid of that percent sign. Let me show you the last one, the 150%. 150%, we're going to start off 150, and my decimal point is here. What we're going to do is we're going to move that decimal point 2 places to the left. So we're going to go 1, 2, and my decimal point would be here, which is what we have. If you look all the way down there, that's what we got. Okay? Now, to change a decimal to a percent, we're going to use the same ideas. The first thing we're going to do is write our decimal as a fraction. Using our place value, we know our denominator will either be 10 or 100 or possibly 1,000. And then we're going to change that fraction into a percent. So let me show you. 68 hundredths, that's how we would say this. If I were going to write that decimal as a fraction, it would be 68 hundredths. Now, my next step is to change that fraction into a percent. To have a percent, we know we need to have a denominator of 100, which in this case we already do. 68 out of 100 is just 68%. Okay? Let's look at this next one. we have 4/10. 4/10, if I write it as a fraction, looks like that. Now, to change a fraction to a percent, we need to have a denominator of 100. So think about what we would do here. To go from 10 to 100, I'm going to multiply by 10. 4 times 10 would give me 40. So 4/10 is the same as 40/100. 40/100 is the same as 40%. And one more. We've got 3 and 15/100. 3 and 15/100 is going to look like this. 3 and 15/100. Well, if I need to change this into a fraction, I need to go from my mixed number into an improper fraction. So 3 times 100 gives me 300, plus 15 means I'm going to have 315 over 100. 315 over 100 is going to be 315%. Okay. Now mathematically, that's what we did. Again, there's a shortcut for this one too. Let me show it to you. To go from a decimal to a percent, this time we're going to move our decimal point 2 places to the right, which is the same as multiplying by 100. Okay? So here's what we do. Same idea. We're going to start with this number, which was 68/100. We're going to take that decimal point and move it 2 places to the right, which becomes 68. And then we just add a percent sign to the end of it. Let me show you over here with 4/10. We're going to start off with 4/10. My decimal point's right here. I move that decimal point 2 places to the right. I have an empty space, so I'm going to add a 0 to it, which will give me 40%. And then finally, last but not least, when I had 3 and 15/100, when I move this decimal point 2 places to the right, it gives me 315, which was 315%. So you can see that these matched.